Hello everybody, today we are working on absolute value inequalities. So if you haven't watched my absolute value equations video, which is I think before that, then watch that first. I think it would help you with this one too. So let's do a question. They said solve and I have x within the absolute less equals 7. If that's the case, what is the solution set for this? The solution set for this is going to be all the numbers whose distance from 0 is less than or equal to 7, whose distance from 0 is less than or equal to 7, which means 7 in negative 7 and all the numbers between them are included in here. So all the numbers between 7 in negative 7 are included. So for example, that's 0. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is not big enough, so I'm gonna make it big enough. Okay, that's the number line. It has the solution negative 7 here in positive 7, and between them that's 0. I don't have to write down all the numbers there. Now negative 7 is included because it's less or equal. This one is also included because less or equal, and all the numbers between them is included for the solution of this absolute value inequalities. So because the way we should read this, actually the absolute is a distance. So if it's a distance from 0, then from 0 it's less than or equal to 7. The distance from 0 is less than or equal to 7, which means the 7 and negative 7, and between them all the numbers included. Okay, so up here I'm gonna draw a line. It's not a straight line, but I'm going to write down all the important information here so we don't have to erase it every time. If you get the question of absolute value inequalities in this form, like this is absolute x and it's less than a, and a has to be, a is positive, then you have to make sure that you change your equation or rewrite your question like this. So it's going to be negative a, and I have less x and then less positive a. You have to rewrite it in this form. Once you rewrite this in this form, then we will solve the inequality further. I have another one, which is if you get the question in this form, for example, x absolute greater, no, that's not good, absolute greater than a, then and a has to be positive, a is positive, then you are going to change this, like it's going to be without the absolute lines, less than negative a or x greater than positive a. So this is how we're going to set up our question or rewrite our question in this form. Okay, let's go back and do all the examples for both of these forms. So the first example that I have, it's the one when absolute expression or absolute value expression is less than a. So let's try that one. I'm going to do x minus 3 within the absolute plus 6 less equal 7. We can use less equal to, by the way, like it's just the form I'm giving you a property, but you can use this for less equal and this one also for greater equal. So we can do that. The property goes for both. So now when you get the question of inequality, absolute inequality, something like this, even if that was equation, then make sure this 6 disappears. You move this to the other side of inequality because I have to isolate my absolute value expression. So the first thing, isolate absolute value expression. So we have to isolate it. So subtract 6 both sides. They cancel. And I'm left with x minus 3 plus equal 1. The reason we are trying to isolate this absolute value expression, because then when it gets isolated, then we know, okay, this is less equal or greater equal than a positive number. I'm interested to see if this number is going to be positive or negative. If it's negative, then there is no solution for it. But if it's positive, then we have to apply our property, which is that one or this one. So in this case, it's less equal, so I'm going to apply the first property. I have to rewrite the question something like that. So this is x minus 3 less equal positive 1, and then you're going to have x minus 3 greater equal negative 1, and that's exactly how our first form is. So I changed it. Now I'm going to go and solve the problem. Make sure the x is isolated, so I'm going to add 3, and I'm going to add 3 both sides. Yeah, they cancel out. What am I left with? Plus 3, negative 1 will give me 2, less equal. X gonna stay less equal. And since I'm reading it from this side, so that's why I said 2 less equal. X less equal. And 3 plus 1 is gonna give me 4. So that is actually my answer. If they want, what does that mean? The solutions are 2 and 4, and all numbers between those two. The graph is going to be something like this. If I draw a graph, I'll start this with 0 because I don't have any negative numbers. This is 1, 2, 3, and a 4. So I'm going to, that's 2 and 4. So 2 is a closed circle. 4 is a closed circle. And all the numbers between them is a solution. So that's what it means. Okay, let's go for another example. Another one. I have solve for x, 8x minus 3 less than negative 2. Okay, and they said solve for x. Okay, if you guys pay attention here, my absolute value inequality, and the first thing we do, we have to isolate the absolute value expression. It's already been isolated. So, but this number is negative 2, and that's not okay because our form says it's supposed to be positive for both of them. So it's not, then it means there is no solution. And exactly, guys, that goes for the equation, absolute value equations. When you have a negative up here, then there is no solution for that. Okay, let's erase all of that, and then we work on the another form that we have. So we're going to work on that one. And I'm not erasing that right side, so we can keep them and we know how to do those. Now let's do the example here. I'm gonna try to do, okay, pen, another example. They said solve for y. And you have y minus 5 absolute greater than 8. How would I solve this? And you know this is positive and this is greater, so I'm going to use this form, that one, because it's greater than a, and a is positive, which is true. So I'm going to rewrite my question something like that. So let's rewrite the question. It's going to be y minus 5 without the absolute lines, and then they said less than negative 8. You see that right there? Then I'm going to make another one, or y minus 5 greater than positive 8. Now we have to solve this. We have to isolate y because they said solve for y. So you add 5 both sides. And they cancel, and I'm left with y less than negative 8 plus 4 will give me negative 3. Then up here, again, we will add 5 both sides because it's subtracting, so opposite operation is addition. Cancel and cancel. And I'm left with y greater than 13. So these are my two answers right there. Now, what does that mean? The solutions are all numbers x such that y is less than negative 3 or y greater than 13. So on the number line, how do we graph this? I have positive 13, so I'm going to make here positive 13. In the middle, probably 0 should go here. And then I have here negative 3. So if that's the case, or maybe let's make it nice. Okay, here is the number line. I have negative 3. This is 0. And then I have all the way 13. Okay, now I'm going to go and graph this first. Y less than negative 3. And you know this is open circle because of this less. You don't have that line underneath. The line underneath means closed circles. So this is open circle on negative 3. So I'm going to make an open circle negative 3. Now read it from the variable side. Y, always when you're graphing, please read from the variable side. So that would make it easier for you. If you say y less, then it means I'm going left. If it's a y greater, I'm going to the right. So if it says y less, then I'm going to the left of negative 3. There you go. It's going to go in this direction. If I do 13, 13 is open circle again. And this time it says y greater than 13. You see the alligator mouth open towards y. So y greater than 13, greater goes to the right. So both of them goes in the opposite direction. Okay, let me give you another example for this. Solve for x. I have 4x plus 5 absolute plus 6 greater than 2. Okay, now let's again excuse me. When that's the case, then we know we have to first isolate our absolute value expression. So I am going to subtract that 6 both sides. Then I'm left with 4x plus 5 within the absolute greater negative 4. Uh-oh, this is a problem because I got negative, which means there is no solution. Okay, that's done. Let's figure it out something harder. And I'm gonna make a question here. Draw a line so we can have enough space. Okay, another example I have is x plus 7 over 2 within the absolute lines minus 1 greater equal, sorry. It's gonna go greater equal 4. Now, again, my absolute value expression has to be isolated, so I'm gonna add 3 both sides. I'm sorry, I'm gonna add 1 both sides. They cancel out. And I'll go back here, like x plus 7 divided by 2 within the absolute greater equal 5. Okay, you guys know this if you watched my other videos for solving equations. To solve equations and to solve inequalities, they have exactly the same steps. Inequality has just one more extra step. The first step for both of them, equation or inequality, is to clear the fractions. How do we clear the fractions? Multiply the least common denominator on both sides with each and every term on both sides. So that's what I'm going to do. That's the first step. Clear the fractions by multiplying the least common denominator and with each term. So what I'm going to do, this is 1. I'm just going to make it 1. And my least common denominator is 2. So I'm going to multiply 2 both sides. When I multiply, they cancel out. And I'm left with x plus 7 greater equal 5 times 2 is 10. So if you guys pay attention, my fraction is gone. I cleared the fraction. The second step was clear the parentheses by using distributive property. I don't have parentheses, so I'm okay here. Then they said the third step is like terms. So I'm going to combine the like terms. So 7 and 10 are like terms. So since 7, and remember when we jump over the inequality, we always use opposite operation. Or if we are jumping over the equal sign, we still use opposite operation. So they cancel out. And then I'm going to go back, and that will be x greater or equal 10 subtract 7 will give me what? 10 subtract 7 will give me 3 positive. So this is one of my answer, right? Now since that was greater and equal 4, then I use this form, like I did one of them, which was this portion. Now I have to rewrite my question in this form. So when I rewrite the question in this form, it's going to be x plus 7 divide by 2 within the absolute, or we don't have absolute. Let's remove them. And then we're gonna have less equal. We're gonna have less equal -5. I didn't apply this step again because we already changed it and it was good, so that's fine. And in this case, I mean, I shouldn't be having these absolute lines either, because if you guys pay attention, that's how we rewrite the question. Let's multiply. We have to rewrite the question something like that without the absolute lines. So that was x greater or equal 3, and that one is absolute x less equal -5. Now let's solve that. Again, we multiply 2 both sides because we have to clear the fractions. That's the first step. Then I'm left with x plus 7 less equal -10. Now again, combine the like terms. If we combine like terms, we subtract 7 both sides. Then it will be x less equal -17. So I got that answer too. If I get 2 answers, then I will make sure that plug them in back in the original and check if that would work. But the solutions are x greater or equal 3 or x less equal -17, and they are okay. So that's how you're gonna do it. Let's do one more example, and I'm gonna clear everything here so I can have enough space. If you guys have any questions, please write in the comment below and I will help you. Okay, now up here I have 3x plus 2 close parentheses divided by 4 less equal 0. Now in this case it's less equal 0. My absolute value expression is already isolated, so I'm okay here. So, and this is 0, so the first thing first, and it's less equal, so I'm using is that less equal, right? So what I'm going to use, and since it's 0, I don't have a number a, like it's not 8. So in this case I'm not going to change or rewrite any of this. I'm just going to solve this like a equation. And we have the first step. The first step was clear, and these are the steps for the equations too. I'm repeating myself, I think, over and over. Clear fractions. So the first step, clear fractions. I'm going to clear fraction by doing the least common denominator. Least common denominator, multiply. So multiply for both sides. Multiply for both sides. 4 cancel out, and I'm left with 3x plus 2 less equal 0. Now the second step is always clear your parentheses. And I already wrote down these in one of the video for equations. So, but I'm just doing it again if you haven't watched that in case. So clear parentheses by using a distributive property. Distributive property. This means distributive. Okay, so I'm going to distribute 3 with x and 3 with 2, and make sure that, remember, this is positive 3 and this is positive x. So if I'm multiplying, I have to do positive 3 times positive x will give me 3x. Positive times positive is positive, and 3 times 2 is 6. Less equal 0. The third step is combine like terms. Combine like terms, what I'm going to do, I'm going to subtract 6 both sides, because 6 and 0 are like terms, all the numbers are like terms. 3x less equal negative 6. Now I have to isolate isolate x. So you divide x both sides, negative 2. So that is my answer for that. If I'm graphing this, remember we read from the variable side. I have 0, this is negative 1, this is negative 2, and this is positive 1, positive 2. So if I'm doing reading from the variable x less equal negative 2, and less equal means it's a closed circle and less goes to the left. This is how it's going to go. So that's the end of the equation. This is the end of this question, and we finished, guys. Please make sure that you write down the form of the question of absolute value inequalities and how do we rewrite them and how do we solve them. If you have any questions, please do it in the comment. Write it down in the comment, and I will try my best to answer the questions. Please like my video, subscribe, and then have a good day, guys. Bye.